WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively in the midst of the Crab Cake Tour. More proceedings ahead. I am working on my Costas tour stop. I'm not working on my Costas tour shirt. I got that out rolling. And all the wise conversations continue to roll on ahead, as do the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens got together. This is when it gets really weird, Luke, because I'm rolling through markets with no mask on, and we're still doing distance football and weird Zoom up press conferences, and you've been a part of that. The Orioles haven't won in a month. It's been, it's been something around here this week. It's been a thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned the Orioles. 16 of 18 that they've lost since the John Means no hitter. Over their 3 weeks since John Means pitches a no hitter, and they've won 2 games over that stretch of time. It's just,
this is where Judge Reinhold in Fast Times would say, hope you enjoyed that celebration, boys. Hope that flight home from Seattle went well for you. How about that?
Yeah, no question about it. Crashing back down to reality. But on the flip side, the good thing is we've at least made it to OTAs. So we do have some football to talk about, albeit helmets and shorts football. But the Ravens out running around in Owings Mills.
When are they signing Lamar? That's where we are now. We're at that point in the game, right? When are we signing?
Well, I mean, I think that question's been asked all offseason, really. But yeah, if you're not talking about the who's pitching, who's giving up runs for the Orioles on any given night, yes, the focus is on Lamar Jackson. And we did hear from Lamar for the first time since, crazy to believe, because remember, he was concussed at the end of the Buffalo game. We didn't hear from Lamar Jackson after the playoff loss. So it's really that Tuesday or Wednesday. They played a Saturday night game.
Well, I follow him on Twitter, so I always sort of know what's on his mind, and it's
right.
It's not usually the deepest of thoughts, but nonetheless, I don't think he shares his deepest thoughts on. I think it's more of being 22 and being on Instagram kind of relationship with the universe, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I was going to say, what 24-year-old is typically sharing their deepest thoughts on social media? But
he's 24 now?
Lamar Jackson did talk. Yeah, he's 24. He's aged a little bit.
Man. Right. He's not.
He might look careful. Yeah. It is crazy to think about it in those terms. In fact, I was just talking to someone about that during Wednesday's OTA, to think he's entering year 4. I mean, you kind of think where Joe Flacco was in year 4, 2011 season. At that point in time, what was the big question about Joe? Can he win the big one? Can the Ravens get over the hump with Joe Flacco as their quarterback at that point? And Lamar Jackson, now he's had more regular season accolades, of course, MVP. He's been to a Pro Bowl, setting records as a rushing quarterback, led the NFL in touchdown passes 2 years ago. But the question, can the Ravens get over the hump in January? Can they get to the pinnacle? So, there's not many similarities between those two quarterbacks, but I think at this point, going back to when Flacco was in year 4 and where Lamar is now, the team-wide question is still there, although the Ravens have had no shortage of regular season success. But talking to Lamar Jackson, asking him about his contract, very similar sentiments to what the Ravens have shared. They want to get something done. I think they're committed to getting something done. He wants to be here for a very long time, and I believe that. But at the same time, typically when players are at this point in their career, this point in their rookie contract, and entering contract negotiations, you're going to hear the sentiment about wanting to be a Raven for life and loving Baltimore and loving the organization. And there's sincerity there, but we also know it's going to cost a lot of money, an insane amount of money.
He can buy my condo if he wants. Just FYI, if you want to be here for life, I got your place, man. Look at the sunrise this morning,
Exactly, no question about it. So nothing earth-shattering in that way. I mean, I think the most interesting element of what he was asked, and it was a very brief Zoom call. I don't know if he had to go to a meeting or whatever it was. It was cut off after only 4 or 5 minutes, but he alluded to the fact, was a little hesitant when he was asked about representation. Remember, he famously did not hire an agent during the pre-draft process. His mother, and I think he had an attorney that just kind of advised him a little bit on his rookie contract, but it's slotted, right? There's not a whole lot that goes into that. A little bit of offset language, a little bit of some details here and there as far as guarantees, but you knew from the moment the Ravens drafted him 32nd overall what the contract was going to be, because that's laid out with the CBA. This is a much different animal. I think we can all safely assume at this point, based on what Patrick Mahomes got last summer, based on what Dak Prescott got back in March, he's going to be looking at something north of $40 million average annual value. It's just a matter of what does that look like? Is it a 10-year deal? Is it a 5-year deal? Is it a 6-year deal? However it looks, it's going to be somewhere, I would say, north of $40 million with the average annual value, because Dak Prescott got 4 years, 160.
And by the way, the Ravens have never really fought with anyone of this magnitude, right? Like, I mean, sort of the Ray Lewis thing, they had a little dust up here and again. I mean, I lost a relationship with Ray Lewis over it because I was like, I thought he needed to be in camp because he was trying to be a leader and trying to get paid. Mm-hmm. That's the way I thought in 1998, 99, right? So it's 23 years way past that boat. And with tagging and, franchise transit, all those things we've learned. And as the salary cap goes up, but Lamar's a different kind of cat for all the reasons you just brought up in regard to not having Sharky agents and like all of that stuff, probably people in his ear, but maybe not so much. I mean, I don't know who's in Lamar's ear, right? Like he is a different cat, probably in the way Joe was a different cat, because there were not a lot of people in Joe's ear. There was Joe, his agent, his dad, and Joe did things way different. I mean, I wrote half a book about it after he won the Super Bowl, right? Hope I get to write that one after Lamar, although people don't read books anymore. We've been through that. Go listen to my Will Leach piece last week at Baltimore Positive about that. But I think it's fascinating that every time the heat goes up, and maybe this is just me being an old fart, right? I think about like what Eric DaCosta wakes up to this morning, and he's like, let them all talk. Whatever's going to happen in Eric's mind, and this is probably for me to get inside the mind of Brian Billick or some people in and around the game a little bit to say, what's really going to happen here? What's really going to happen is, are they going to roll out the carpet? And they're going to do that when it's convenient for them, when it serves their cap, when they have it all organized. And I'm sure they do, because this is what Pat Moriarty and Eric DaCosta sit up drinking wine talking about, right? So I'm sure they have all this organized, but they already know what's going to happen. For us to sit here and BS it, this is pretty well like they know the range, they know where they are, they know what they need to do, and they also know the timing of it. And there's also the B plan, which is, well, if he plays this year, we don't have this contract, and he gets hurt, or something happens, or it's a disappointment, or it's or whatever. I don't know that this is a marriage the Ravens feel like they need to run into. And I'll continue to go back to that every time it comes up, every time some channel whatever reporter asks a question of Lamar, or when I read fanboy idiots on the internet who have a blog writing about all the pressure and all that. I know these cats, and I haven't talked to Eric. I mean, I don't have any inside. I wish I did. If I had inside information, I'd jump on the table and say, this is the way it is. But I'm old, and I've been around this a long time. I don't think the Ravens feel any pressure at all. And I think all this talk and all that, whatever, it'll happen on their time when the risk is less for them. I always think about it for them, because I don't think Lamar is going anywhere. I don't think there's any opportunity to go anywhere. And I don't think there's any leverage in the league to do what Emmitt Smith did 30 years ago, which is to say, F you, I'm not playing. I won't show up if you tag me, franchise, whatever that is. I won't play for 40 million this year. I'll just sit out because I want 200 million. That's not reality. I mean, so even I feel foolish on Memorial Day weekend even discussing it as like a topic. It's only a topic because a reporter asked a question. In my mind, I don't think it's big doings in the castle. And if they decide a week from now to give him 200 million and pop champagne and call King Liquors, and somebody sneaks in and it becomes a ESPN, well, it won't be Kenny Mayne because they fired him, but if it becomes like a thing that they gave him all this money and give him the coronation, I'll be a little shocked by that. But dude, I'm shocked that they gave Humphrey the money they did when they did. I'm shocked they gave Stanley the money they did when they did. And then Stanley got hurt. So I think therein lies some sort of cautionary tale about, I don't think this is happening tomorrow. So I'm not waiting for the Coons Ford text from you to say they've given Lamar $280 million and set some standard. And I just don't expect it to happen right now. That's my 8 minutes on it. So have at it.
Well, I mean, there's not a ton of urgency from the Ravens side because he's under contract this year. They've already exercised his fifth-year option, which gives him 23 million guaranteed next year. So he has a little more security now from that standpoint. Now it's not 40 million a year, but 23 million guaranteed. That's some nice security in the meantime in terms of trying to work something out that makes sense. I mean, I think I think you are underselling quarterback leverage being a little bit different than any other position in the NFL. But at the same time, he's under contract for the next 2 years. So we're not talking about someone where he's playing on the franchise tag now. I think, and this is where I just said, I think you're underestimating it a little bit. I think you look at how Dak Prescott played the situation in Dallas to the point where he got 40 million a year, coming off of a ugly broken ankle situation. I think it speaks to quarterbacks having a lot of leverage. However, I do agree and share your sentiment that I don't think the Ravens are in a position where they feel they need to jump into this immediately. I do think there is a window of time between now and say the start of training camp, if not the start of the regular season, where you explore it and you want to try to explore it in a sense of something that's going to be beneficial to you financially in the short term, keeping in mind lower salary cap this year. I know the league has put out some information as far as what the salary cap, kind of what it could be next year, but it's still not going to be what it was expected to be before the pandemic. So can you structure something that makes sense in the short term that's fairly balanced in the long term, whether it's a 4, 5, 6, 7 year or even a 10-year deal like Patrick Mahomes? I'm guessing it's not going to be that kind of structure, but I think you look at Deshaun Watson, you look at Dak Prescott, they've been these 4 to 5 year deals. That's kind of what we've seen. So, and on the flip side, if you're Lamar Jackson, I think because of some of what I just said, as far as he's under contract the next 2 years, not making much money this year in base salary. I think it's 1.77 million, but 23 plus million next year guaranteed with the Ravens exercising the option. He has a little more long-term stability, or not long-term, short-term stability as far as guaranteed money. So, I don't think there's any conspiracy here. I don't think it's a case where the Ravens are reluctant to pay him long-term. I think it's a case of wanting it to be on their time and to have this make sense for both sides. And I do think, and Eric DeCosta was asked about this earlier in the offseason, the idea of Lamar potentially representing himself. And he only gave kind of a coy maybe when he was asked about it on Wednesday. But when you have a player representing himself, I think there is a unique opportunity to take your time with it, be a little more harmonious, understanding that you do have to be delicate in how you word it because you don't want to hurt the player's feelings in the way that you go after an agent and say, well, this guy doesn't do this guy doesn't do that. You have to be a little more careful in that way. And I think Eric DeCosta recognizes that as someone who's been in an NFL front office for a very long time. But it's a matter of having it come together, having the structure make sense. Could that happen next week? Sure. Because I think both sides want it. At the same time, deadlines are what spur action, and there's not really a deadline at this point. They've exercised the fifth-year option. He's under contract through 2022. So it really is a case of, see if you can make something work right now that both sides are happy about. But if not, you can revisit this next offseason. You can revisit this next June. You can revisit this next summer. You could even revisit it after next season if worse comes to worse, because you do have the franchise tag at your disposal. But then that's when you're getting to a point where it could potentially get ugly, and you're talking about holdouts and you're talking about guys staying away from the facility. So we're a long ways away from that happening.
And the Ravens have no history of doing that, right? But I in my defense of the position of it, my position is just what their position would be. Their position would be, he signed for 2 years. Y'all talk all you want. He's going to make his $23 million next year, and we're going to hope to keep him upright. We're going to hope we win. But 2 years from now, if you're 5 years in and you haven't won anything and somehow they don't make the playoffs, or there's a disappointment, or the Browns ascend, or this Burrow kid catches on, or whatever were to happen. And I'm not dismissing anything he's done in the past, but I don't think you ever pay anybody for what they did in the past. And certainly someone that they need to see more in the passing game. They need to do more. They've surrounded him. They've done all those things. But I don't think that they're up all night thinking about giving him $200 million right now. I just don't. And whatever day that comes, that'll be a great day. And I think it'll be money earned. And if he goes and wins a Super Bowl next year, he'll put his feet up on the desk like Flacco did a decade ago and say, whatever Dak got, let's talk closer to 50 million. You know what I mean? You see what I just did? So there is that point where setting the standard is there, but there's also that point where he doesn't have some Boris Shark on the other end of him. He doesn't have that sort of representation, and the Ravens have no history of screwing players or screwing things like this up. So whatever this is, I think it's unique, but I also don't think it's imminent in any way, not nearly as imminent as the conversation in and around the team from maybe more neophyte fans or people that listen to our segments for 30 or 40 minutes at a clip and would know, to be predictive of this and to be asking those kinds of questions. I guess they're fan questions to ask, but then there's the real answer. And the real answer is based in math and based in where we are in the life cycle of the contract, right?
Well, but you just said it. I mean, when you're into year 4 of a rookie contract, and even talking a first-round contract where you add on the 5th year, I mean, it's a relevant topic. That doesn't mean it's happening immediately. And I think, Lamar was asked about it on Wednesday, and his comment was that he did talk to Eric DaCosta, but his quote was probably like a month or two ago. So they had preliminary discussions, and Eric had talked about this, but has it gone very far? No. Does it mean that they're really far apart and ticked off at each other? Not necessarily, but it gives you an idea of, okay, this is where we are at this point in time. This is where you might be at this point in time. We've already paid Ronnie Stanley. We've already paid Marlon Humphrey. Presumably, we want to pay Mark Andrews. We'll see about Marquise Brown. We'll see about Bradley Bozeman, who's moving to center now. But, this is what you have to.
I would just say we've already paid those guys, and we haven't won the Super Bowl either, right? So there's a little bit of pressure on, can he win? Will he win the Super Bowl? We'll pay, if we pay. These other guys got paid. They haven't won the Super Bowl. They lost playoff games too. So I just want to point that out in regard to, if that's your barometer on paying Lamar. That's all. Just from a fan standpoint.
Well, sure. And if you only paid guys who won Super Bowls, you wouldn't be paying very many people because it doesn't happen very often. So, yeah, sure. But I think, again, this comes back to the timing of it coming together. I do think the Ravens, if you ask Eric DaCosta right now, do they want Lamar Jackson to be their quarterback long-term? Yes. I don't think there's any major doubt in that way. That isn't different from any other player that potentially gets hurt or any other player that doesn't age quite as well. Let's face it, Joe Flacco, after 2014, he didn't play at an incredibly high level. And there are lots of reasons for that, including part of it on Joe, part of it on the front office, part of it on the coaching staff turnover and the offensive coordinator. So the point is, there are lots of variables that impact all this, right? So sometimes with that understood, let some of those variables play out. Let's see what the roster looks like. Let's see what Rashad Bateman looks like. Let's see what Tylan Wallace look like. And that's going to impact whether you're going to pay Marquise Brown. Let's see what Marquise Brown looks like in 2021. Is he going to be a guy that you want to invest in long-term? Or is he going to be a guy like Torrey Smith who plays out his rookie contract and then you're going to bid him farewell and he's going to make money elsewhere and probably not be worth that money. So there's so much that has to play out here. And it's not an indictment or a referendum on Lamar Jackson. It's just how this works. And you do understand that whatever you pay him, whether it ends up being 40 or, to your point, you take the risk that, hey, they win the Super Bowl this year, you might be paying them more than what Patrick Mahomes is making in terms of AAV. So you do run that risk.
Every penny of it.
Well, and that's the point. You get, and that was always what cracked me up about
I spent last week defending Joe Flacco. And I'm like, right. The fact that I still have to defend Joe Flacco at this point is absurd, or defend Brian Billick, who says, they say they can't take the ring away, but they'll spend the rest of their life trying. And that's
right.
Kind of where we are. So I'm not here to diminish Lamar in that way, but the ultimate goal of winning a championship and the bar that's set here it's extraordinarily high. It really is. It's different than a playoff berth in Cleveland and being Baker and taking the city by storm. lose first-round playoff games the next 2 years, and all of a sudden $40 million doesn't sound like it's worth it anymore.
Well, I mean, I don't even know if it's so much that as much as it's just, that contract, whether it's 40, because I'm sure if Lamar Jackson called up Eric DeCosta and said, I'll take 30 million a year, Eric would say deal, and it would be over, right? He's not going to do that because Lamar looks at the market and understands what other quarterbacks are making, and he shouldn't take 30 million a year. I mean, that would be foolish of him to take that much of a cheaper deal as far as his first real contract compared to your rookie deal. So, but either way, whether it's 40, whether the number's 42, whether it's 45, or if it's 50 and he wins the Super Bowl and everyone's happy, and it's dramatically going to impact your salary cap. It's going to dramatically impact your roster and your ability to build that roster and maintain what's been a really good roster. So again, the urgency, there's urgency over the next 2 years to get something done. You don't want to get to a point where it's a franchise tag or anything like that, but he's under contract this year. He's under contract for 23 million next year. There's no major rush. You want to do this right, and you want to do it in a way that benefits your franchise. And also, you want to do something that your quarterback's going to be happy, because if he's happy, that means there's a better chance that that the work ethic and being there and being the leader you want him to be and continuing to excel and wanting to get better and all those things come into play, rather than, if you rush into something and, either side isn't happy with it, then, the odds of, things being prosperous long term, they diminish a little bit. So, I don't think I think it's a topic, but I don't think it's a topic that anyone's losing sleep over at this point in time. How about that?
Luke Jones is here. He is Baltimore Luke, and when he's not chasing stories like this in the off season and out watching OTAs from afar and mini camp soon, we lament the Baltimore Orioles. I was on Twitter just sort of taking a break off the big screen because I have this beautiful screen now, and I sit here and I do conversations and I put together crab cake tours. So I try to get off the screen. I have my phone. It's like, oh, Orioles are playing this afternoon. Oh, that's right. They played last night. Oh, that's right. They're in Minnesota. I like them. Oh, that series is almost over. Oh, they lost again. This has really been, this is the worst nightmare, right? Like that they would hit this sort of a spin here and become irrelevant very, very quickly. Memorial Day weekend, upside down, playing, 333 ball and playing 0.0 ball over the last week and a half and 128 ball over, or whatever, like whatever those numbers are. It's not just trending in the wrong direction now. It's the nightmare of all the ish we talk about in the off season about them really not trying and really not fielding a major league team, but rebuilding. And hey, how about that Keegan Aiken? And how about that DL Hall? And Rutschman's coming soon. All the stuff we do on a daily basis. Then they have to go out and play. And then they're real games. And then they get their ass kicked. And it's June and they're underwater. And it's an exhibition. It's Eddie Feigner now. And that sucks, but that's 2 weeks after the no-hitter gave everybody. Like that day, I'm like, maybe they'll play 500 ball this year. You and I were talking Keuchel and like all that. And now all of a sudden it's like,
Yeah. Is it really that surprising?
No.
But that's part of the point of the rebuilding process. And it stinks. Look, believe me, over the last 3 weeks, I haven't had any fun watching this team either. Let's be very clear about that. But I can't sit here and say that I'm outraged about, that this is some major referendum on Mike Elias. He told you from the moment he arrived that this was going to take a while. Keep in mind, let's, as long as it's felt because of the pandemic, Mike Elias has had 2 drafts as the general manager here in Baltimore. That makes it sound a little bit, it feels like he's been here a long time because the pandemic felt like, 2020 felt like 3 years rather than 1.
He inherited Yusniel Diaz is what he inherited.
He's had 2 drafts, and I'm not saying that to make, ultimately the results are going to have to be there, or someone else will be the GM in 3 years or whatever it'll end up being. But, you're going to have some stretches like this. What's disappointing for me is not losing 14 of 16 or whatever it's been since the John Means no-hitter, as much as that's not fun. It's been more so Ryan Mountcastle's really struggled this year. And it's been more so Dean Kramer hasn't been able to figure it out after looking really good in his 4 or 5 starts he had in September last year, which understood it was only 4 or 5 starts, but
the pieces that aren't the junk pieces have
right,
not,
exactly.
Right. Okay,
Exactly.
enough.
You mentioned John Means and the Dallas Keuchel comparison. John Means has been fantastic. The question is going to be, and again, this isn't something that they have to do by July because he has 3 more years of club control. So there's no urgency there. But where are you at the end of the year? Where are you with your pitchers in AAA and AA? How close are they? We know Adley Rutschman, I would assume is going to be ready for the majors by the end of this year, whether he gets a cup of coffee or not. But what about their other top prospects, and where are they? How far away are they? And then it's trying to marry that with what they have at the major league level. John Means has gotten a lot of conversation. To me, the much more relevant player is Trey Mancini, who only has 1 more year before he hits free agency. If you're in a position where, to your point, you're playing 333 kind of ball, or worse, much worse than that over the last 3 weeks, but you get into a position of, do you need to move Trey Mancini at the trade deadline? And almost to a point of, he kind of deserves that, right? A chance to go play for a winner after what he's been through over the last year. As much as the organization has supported him and he's talked about that, he wants to win. He remembers what it was like in 2016 coming up at the end of the year and being part of a wild card club and, hitting a few home runs, but not really being a part of it, but seeing it. And he hasn't gotten to experience that since then. So to me, that's the big one when you're talking about a guy who's been leading the league in RBIs and looking like the player he was 2 years ago. But, you're continuing to assess. And what's frustrating over the first 2 months of the season, and really specifically the last 3 months, because we've seen the starting rotation obviously not hold up after Means, and now we've seen it really impact the bullpen the last couple of weeks after the bullpen was pretty good early in the season. So it's frustrating, but at the same time, it's not something that Mike Elias didn't basically warn the fan base about and saying that it's going to be this way for a while. And look, are there different ways to go about doing this where the Orioles spend more at the major league level and they don't have one of the lowest payrolls in baseball and you get 10 more wins out of it? Yeah. Am I going to say that that's necessarily better for the long-term outlook for this organization? No. Am I going to say that the way they're doing it right now is going to be the optimal way of doing it? Time will tell, because there are multiple channels of trying to get better. So, and that doesn't mean you have to have a $180 million payroll either. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think the big key is they need to get some guys back healthy. Hunter Harvey, Dylan Tate, help the bullpen out a little bit. We'll see what Keegan Aiken looks like getting some starts now with Kramer going to the minors. And, at some point, Ryan Mountcastle needs to start hitting. I think they've been smart in being patient, because, what are you going to do? You send him to the minors. He's been at AAA, so you have to give him a chance. Nick Markakis didn't hit his first 3 months in the big leagues. Go back and look at that. So it takes some guys. Cal Ripken didn't hit after a home run on opening day. He was awful for the next 6 weeks or so. So, there are different timelines for development, and it's what I talk about all the time. As much as you want it to be that gradual, linear, you're just getting better and better and better, there are peaks and valleys to this. And very clearly, the understatement of the conversation, the Orioles are going through a valley right now. So, it's been rough to watch. There's no question about that.
Water
but
or beer.
I can't say I'm shocked.
Crab cakes
yeah.
Fix it. The beer
there you go. There's
what
not
you need. Cold in Birdland right now, but I got a refrigerator back here. Our friends at Costas are serving crabs. Our friends at Rofo are serving up fried chicken. I don't want to say I go to sleep on Rofo fried chicken, but I hadn't had any in a couple of weeks, and I was picking my wife up at the airport. I snuck over to the one right on Nursery Road, which is probably my favorite Rofo there by the Mexican restaurant and the barbecue joint right off the freeway, and went in, got me a little 2-piece, waited in the cell phone lot. I was like noshing on it. I was going to put a picture up. My fingers were had a little, Rofo on them, so I couldn't touch my phone so much, but I'm thinking, This is a moment with Rofo. I had a Rofo moment right there in the watching the planes land at BWI. Appreciate our friends at Royal Farms. I was also in Hamden the other day for a little art gallery thing. That was nice. So I passed the Rofo worldwide headquarters. I'll be getting into Chicken Suit during Chicken Palooza, having Crab Cake-a-Palooza all summer long on the Eastern Shore and out to Western Maryland as we plot our crab cake tour, plot the Orioles, whatever they're going to do this summer, and certainly for the Ravens getting ready for minicamp. Luke will be in Owings Mills whenever possible and necessary down at Camden Yards. You can find him at Baltimore Luke out on social media. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net, and together we are at WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, where we never stop talking Baltimore positive.